Hi, everybody. I'm back with another week of chatting with you. I was just laughing because I used Loom to record this and it just said as it was counting down, "You're the star of the show." So I'm going to remember that. I'm the star of the show. I'm holding on to my lip gloss, which I have bedazzled the hell out of. I'm really into my back to tween phase of bedazzling everything. I had gone crazy on my earbuds. What do the influencers do that thing? So that's what's going on in my world. I hope everybody is doing well and having a great start to their week. I wanted to talk a little bit about something different this week, less compliance focused, but I've heard something recently that's popped up a few times. Business owners hiring or leaders hiring for the same role multiple times and struggling with, interviews go great. And then the employee starts and things just start to fall apart. So, that's a really frustrating situation. You put so much time, so much energy, so much effort of your own, your teams, the candidates, like everybody you're interviewing. It costs a lot of money to have that kind of attrition or even to just interview people in general. And so, what we want to do is not end up in that situation, right? Wouldn't that be great? But how do you do that? It's not always a foolproof, can't say that, foolproof process. Each role is different. Each person is different. Some people are just really good interviewers, right? And it's really hard to cut through how to determine that. So, some people might blame themselves. Some leaders, interviewers, business owners, hiring managers might say that they think they're a bad judge of character. And really, it's not that you're bad at hiring. It's that you're missing a few things, right? So, if you're thinking about somebody, you're like, they're not organized enough, they're not taking initiative. If these are some of the problems you're having with these new hires, it's not a people problem necessarily. It may be a system and process and self-awareness problem. Bear with me here. When there's no clear expectations on what the role looks like, what the employee should be doing, employees just guess, right? They do what they think they should be doing. They do it in a way where they are determining priorities themselves, which may not align with your expectations. So if you're not being very specific and very clear on what they need to be doing, that is most likely the first step. This includes not just having that initial conversation. One of the things I always say is that a job description is the basis for the job, right? I mean, obviously, you send it out to people who are interviewing, you use that as your guiding light. And when the person's hired, you kind of forget about the job description. I would challenge you to incorporate the job description into the first week and a 6-month check-in, perhaps, the annual review. The job description really should be the map for this employee to succeed. This is what success looks like. This is what I expect of you. This is what I need you to be working on. In the beginning, on an employee's first day, the last time they saw the job description was most likely when they applied for the job. They probably haven't seen it since. So I think it's a great touch point to go over it with them. Walk through step by step what things they're going to be starting with. There are probably some things on that job description that won't come into effect or the employee won't have that responsibility until they're a few months in, maybe it's 6 months in. So creating that plan and those expectations are super important to just start off on the right foot, right? So you have your expectations out of the way. When there aren't these check-ins, I think that misalignment happens super quickly and sometimes quietly, which is the worst, right? So you have your new hire, they're kind of off on their own, doing their own thing. You think they're doing great. And then things start to fall through the cracks, or they're focusing on the wrong things, or they're not getting things done how you want them to be done. And that's going to start to build this like quiet resentment within you. But maybe the problem was they were never told. So make sure you're always communicating those expectations. And when you are in the beginning of the process, don't blame the hire. There's no one to blame. It's just about getting that two-way communication down to start. So, with that being said, there are other reasons for hires not working out, right? Like maybe not just expectations. Maybe really it just wasn't a good fit. I had a client that came to me and was telling me about this role that they had, that they've hired multiple people for and had to keep, letting people go or people would leave, that this position just was not working out on their team. And it was a position that they needed. It was an operationally focused, data focused position. And every person they hired into it just could not do the job to their expectations. And so they went through the job description, making sure that it was really clear. Job description was on point. But, they would have people that interviewed great. And then once they got into the role, it just didn't work out. And the hiring manager, who was also the founder, kept saying, I think I just keep attracting the wrong people. And I don't think that that is a fair assessment. So, there is no foolproof way of hiring for a specific role, but there are some things you could do to make that process a little easier. We ended up running their CliftonStrengths profile, the candidate's CliftonStrengths profile, and for the previous hires, and then started to think about what the role really needed to look like. And what we found was that the people that were previously hired for this role on paper were not a great match for the type of position it was. So when we ran the CliftonStrengths profiles on previous hires, they led with more relationship building, with, maybe more futuristic types of strengths, meaning like thinking into the future, being those big picture people that really focus on, building relationships with others, relator, woo, which is winning others over. I'm very high in woo, if you can't tell. Really, nothing wrong with these people by any means, but just not the right fits for this role. What the role actually needed was to be higher in execution and strategic themes. So think context, where you're looking back at past information to inform current decisions. Analytical, discipline, so that they're like really focused and able to concentrate and focus on those really small details. And so we used CliftonStrengths then in the hiring process. So first we analyzed the past people that didn't work out and really got clear on what sort of talents or strengths would be successful in this role. And then ran a report for people that were interviewing for the job and built out clear expectations with touch points. And they really hit their stride. Like they found the ideal candidate for that role, and they are thriving in it. Now, I'm not going to say it was a fairy tale, right? But this is another tool in your toolkit to help you find the best fit for your team. So, CliftonStrengths, you might ask, what is this? CliftonStrengths is a talent assessment that ranks 34 natural talent themes. The ways you're naturally wired to feel, think, behave. Everyone gets a 1 to 34 ranking. I usually like to focus on the top 10. Some people just focus on their top 5, which is fine. And those are your dominant talents. The whole philosophy is super simple. It's stop trying to fix your weaknesses and build your talents into strengths. So that's why we really focus on the ones that are higher. And I also find that, pulling in some of your top strengths really help decide like how you're able to move forward with things instead of using your weaknesses. So for me, here's a great example. Competition, super low. I'm not a competitive person. I'm the worst person to bring onto your team for like a game if you want to win. If you want a cheerleader, if you want someone that's like a good vibe for the team, I'm your gal because I have responsibility really high and I have a lot of relationship building themes really high. So I feel responsible for the team, right? So I'm going to do my best, but it's not out of competition. It's out of my feeling of feeling responsible for others. So that's how I like to look at CliftonStrengths. So back to my original use case, right? With this client that I had worked with. There's two layers that most founders skip. So layer one, they need to fix the system, right? So they need a clear job description, written expectations, regular check-ins built into the calendar before the employee starts, technically. I would recommend doing touch points every single day of their first week. And then after that, once a week. Or, then you can end up going to bi-weekly. The more the communication, the better. But really setting aside those times for not just like day-to-day tasks, but bigger picture conversations, maybe for some projects that need to be worked on, or for some things that they might need to learn or new initiatives that might be introduced to them. They need to know what good performance looks like. So that needs to be communicated as well. It's not just what they need to do, it's what success looks like in the role. So that's a really important differentiation between the task at hand versus, how they do it and what success looks like. I would say some of the most successful leaders give that end game, right? Like, I need this project to be done on this time, to look this way, but you can figure out how to get there. So they give them those end game like restrictions, right? But allow that employee to do whatever they need to do, however they need to do it to get to that point. The guidance is really helpful. I do find that people do like a small amount of structure, right? It makes them feel like confident, like they know what they're doing, and like they're doing a good job. The second layer is knowing who you're hiring, right? So skills and experience will tell you what someone has done. Strengths tell you how they're wired to work. Think about that. A futuristic thinker, so someone futuristic in their top 10, will always struggle in a role that's anchored in past and present. And it's not a flaw by any means. We need those futuristic thinkers. I have futuristic, like somewhere mid, but I'm a business owner. So I really need to be thinking about the future, the bigger picture. And I have peers that are really high in futuristic that I bounce ideas off of because that is their strength. So, if you do have something that you need and maybe it's part of your weaknesses, who else can you pull in to help you with those things? Most founders really only focus on fixing layer one, which is the process. And that does help a lot, right? The revolving door definitely slows down, but that doesn't stop it. You really need that second layer of knowing who you're hiring. So once everything is in place, the real question is, do you know who you're leading, right? You've hired them. You know who you're hiring. Do you know who you're leading now? So systems create the container. Strengths tell you what's inside of it. So the beautiful package inside of the box, right? The goods that you ordered online that show up 2 weeks later and you're like, when did I order this? When you understand how each person on your team is wired, how they think, how they process, how they build trust, how they communicate, things do get easier. You're both able to get what you need out of that working relationship. Feedback lands differently because you know how to communicate, and delegation works better. It's just a fact. And, conflict minimizes and makes a little more sense. The work I do with small businesses, is really about perfecting this, finding this, implementing this, and perfecting it so that your business runs seamlessly, that your people are thriving, you're thriving, everyone's communicating. Isn't that the dream, right? Everyone's communicating, everybody's working flawlessly together. We're all accepting of each other's strengths. So, if this sounds like something that you think would be beneficial on your team, or if you have more questions about Clifton Strengths, or even the process of how to set up a great hiring process, there are a few options. I definitely do team engagements with Clifton Strengths, which is one of my absolute favorite things to do, where I come in, I do it with the existing team, I can do it with your hires. With existing teams, we have everybody take an assessment, they have a one-on-one coaching call, and then we come together as a team to really learn more about each other, to figure out how each other operates, how they're naturally inclined to work together, and who you can pull in different areas for different scenarios. And my favorite part, we get to look at a big grid with everybody's profile on it to see where you're really strong, where there are gaps within the team, and then again, think about who you can pull in to support you. So if you have questions about any of this, just drop a comment leader and I will reach out and get back to you. So I hope that this was super informative for everybody out there hiring and building teams. And if you bedazzle anything of your own, please put a picture in the comments as well. All right, everybody, I'll see you next week.